ours that is a 20-year conversation. And you have had the experience of dealing with less than scrupulous operators in those plots for years. And we've seen it, wild cat mining, the things that they were trying to do. A lot of things did not go well, should not have been done the way they were. But I'm hopeful that over time that I can express to you that we're going to do it differently, that we're not that type of an operator, that we're a publicly traded company on the stock exchange, and that we're directed by a board, and that board has governance to the Exchange Commission. And we're also beholden to you as stakeholders in this process and locals that could potentially be impacted if we were to do things wrong. But I also want to be able to have a conversation about what the potential benefits are, because I think we're in a moment in our current situation nationally with respect to issues that we saw pop up during the pandemic, supply chain issues. You know, everybody had trouble buying toilet paper, and that could be said too for metals here in the near future. So if we want to rein in inflation and not see $4 a pound copper go to $8, then we kind of need to help nationally by identifying, exploring, developing local sources of minerals, help address those supply chain issues, help our national defense relative to these trade wars that are developing with China and Russia. We're beholden to those countries right now for the minerals that they produce that we don't. And we have some of those minerals right here in the products. Aside from that, we're in the middle of the green energy transition right now. Everybody wants to buy an EV. For Christ's sake, even bicycles are becoming electric. What's the point of having a bicycle if we can ride around on an electric bicycle? So, so we're seeing this increased demand for copper relative to this transition to the green energy future. And that is going to drive the price up. That's demand, driving the demand for copper up. And there's a supply gap growing. That all is going to affect inflation. It's going to affect your pocketbooks. And if we're beholden to these other countries, China and Russia, where the environmental regulations aren't as strong, we have the best environmental regulations and oversight and ability as a population to have an impact on how a project is designed and built and benefits the community, then maybe we should do it here. And that is the 20-year conversation that I think could be a benefit to Mancos, to Montezuma County, to McLeod County, and the region in general. My name is Scott Tetzel. Like Danny said, I'm the president of Metallic Minerals. I am an exploration geologist by trade. I got my degree from Fort Lewis College in 1988. Always wanted to stay right here and work here, but there weren't these kind of jobs when I graduated. So I had to go out and do my thing. I've got a lot of international experience, having worked in Russia for a year, Philippines for a year, Mexico, Eastern Canada, Western Canada, 20 years in Alaska, and I'm an outdoorsman as well. So I understand the issues, and I know right off the bat, we know that water security, water quality, water supply is going to be a huge issue with anything that we're doing up here. But again, right now, we're just doing mineral exploration. And I want to tell you or talk to you a little bit about that with these slides, but I'll talk a little bit first about Metallic Minerals. Metallic Minerals is a publicly traded company, as I mentioned. We are actually part of a collaboration of a group of companies called the Metallic Group of Companies. Metallic Minerals, the company that I'm president of, has projects not only here in Colorado, but also in the Yukon territories or Yukon Territory in Canada, both in placer gold mining and as a silver lead zinc project in the center part of the Yukon that we're developing. And we're not a mining company. Our partner company, Stillwater Critical Minerals, has a copper, cobalt, nickel, copper, cobalt, platinum, palladium project in the Beartooth Mountains north of Yellowstone in Montana that is, again, one of these critical mineral projects. And one of the things that you'll see as I talk about it here is that even the Biden administration is very concerned about this supply chain issue and identifying critical minerals to help support not only the robustness of our economy, but national defense. And so they're working with the Biden administration on grants to help support their exploration work. And you'll see that due to that Infrastructure Act from a few years ago that Biden passed, there's money now being spent in the La Platas by the United States Geological Survey to help identify critical minerals in conjunction with the Colorado Geological Survey. So the areas have the potential down the road to be of national importance. The three companies, the idea there is they're all independently traded on the Toronto Venture Exchange, so they're generally smaller companies. All three share headquarters in Vancouver, Canada. Half of the staff is US based, half of the staff is Canadian based. And we come with a lot of experience, and you probably won't be able to read this from back of the room, but this is our leadership team. And I mentioned that we have a board that we're publicly traded and a lot of governance through the Securities Exchange Commission and various other ways. But our board, you see a lot of PhDs up there and MSCs and MBAs, very well experienced board, including the second two gentlemen that I'll mention, Dr. Steve Enders, who's the head of the Geology and Mineral Engineering Department of Colorado School of Mines. He's a very well-respected individual that was Vice President of Exploration for Newmont and Vice President of Exploration for Freeport-McMoRan, both of which have projects that are in operation in Colorado. And then Jeff Carey is our senior project manager here. He's on medical leave right now, otherwise he'd be here tonight. But he is a Fort Lewis College graduate. He was born in Hayden, raised in Steamboat, graduated from Fort Lewis, lived in Durango most of his life, was an adjunct professor at Fort Lewis for several years and working on mineral exploration projects both in the Yukon and with us here now. And a very well-respected person with a lot of local knowledge. And then the rest of our team is a mixture of international experience, both Canadian and South African and Welsh as well. So why are we really doing this? And I mentioned, that critical minerals and supply chain and national defense and green energy economy transition. That's really kind of why we're doing this, with that focus on coming back into the country and doing mineral exploration in the US, the Western US, which has really, other than Nevada, not been a priority for the last 30 years. There are a few mining legacy issues that have popped up, Summitville for one here in Colorado, that scared a lot of people away and changed the regulatory environment around doing mining and mineral exploration in the West. And that is what's causing us to be behind and be beholden to countries like China and Russia. So Russia or China is the main producer of rare earth elements that go into your phone. And everybody says, oh, iPhones are great. I love my iPhone. I love my EV. But, oh, I hate mining. And where's the middle ground? You can't have this without having this. So I think you need to keep an open mind on that. And I know that there are people out here that are passionately against any kind of mining. And I understand that, you know, if that's, I'm not gonna be able to change your mind, but I think you do need to kind of keep an open mind in that regard. Just looking at that demand, so this is a chart that shows the increasing demand on the right, and the yellow or gold block in there is the growing demand for EVs and electric vehicles and other electrification. You know, things that are electrified. The one thing that I've learned that's critical about electrification and this green energy transition is it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to build an EV that has 80 kilograms of copper wire in it. And we're going to build a new house that has 400 pounds of copper in it. But to get power to those places, we've got to double the grid to meet the EV demand. So you think about all the copper that needs to be produced to double the amount of wires across the country to deliver the power to these electric vehicles. That's a lot of copper. So that's creating that demand. But the blue block on the left side, that's the supply. So supply is decreasing. And that decreasing supply is because a lot of these big mines, these big open pit mines that you see in Arizona, you know, Climax wasn't copper, but we've all driven by that and seen what a mess that is. Those things are out of vogue. Nobody's doing those anymore. Nobody wants them. And they're hard to find because all the easy ones to find were found. So now the focus is on underground deposits and underground mines to mine these metals. But there's another component, and that component is that there is a long timeline to development of deposits. So as the supply gap grows, inflation is going to continue to grow because the price of these metals is going to increase. And I'll show you another slide on that later. But just another note is, you know, our primary focus of exploration, we're in the very early stages of that exploration. That's why you haven't heard from us yet. We had planned on doing open houses this summer, but with our project manager's sudden extended medical leave, things have gotten a little out of sort for us. But other than our focus being copper, silver, gold, platinum, and palladium, there is also rare earth elements that, again, go on your phone, in the La Platas, and tellurium. Tellurium is used in solar panels, but I'm also hearing new developments on a tellurium battery. It's a lithium tellurium solid state battery. One of the problems with lithium batteries is they catch fire. Well, a lithium tellurium solid state battery does not catch fire. So this new development is going to drive demand for tellurium. Well, the best place to find tellurium in the world is between Telluride, it's named after the metal, and our area here. So you'll see increased interest in these metals as the economy changes as we go ahead. I mentioned earlier, USGS working with Colorado Geological Survey on identification of these metals, having spent last year over $300,000 in mapping and sampling in the La Platas, and conducted an airborne geophysical survey to study the geophysical qualities of the rocks in the La Platas. So your government is also doing essentially what we're doing. In part, they're doing it to look at historic waste dumps, to see if those can be cleaned up, obviously, or processed for critical minerals. So yeah, let's just talk about the La Plata project. We are going to get into the history in a second. Of course, that's a picture of the La Plata range. You'll see these numbers over here on the side. Those are what we call a resource. That resource represents a known quantity of metals in the ground. And right now, to this point, we've identified over 1 billion pounds of copper. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually really small in the mining world. And 17 million ounces of silver. If you take the metal value, that's $5 billion worth of metal value in the ground. Okay, so that is going to continue to be of interest. If it's not us, it's somebody else. 5 minutes, he says. Shoot, I thought I was going to have the whole thing. I better wet my whistle here. So long history of mining in the district. Silver discovered by the Spaniards in the 1700s. Small mines, all those small mines up there, they're point sources for acid rock drainage. Mined between 1870 and 1940. All those mines were closed down in World War I or II. And then exploration occurred by the majors on the copper, the big copper industry from the 50s to the 70s. They drilled 50 holes, and that was the basis of our interest in coming in 2019. There hadn't been any real exploration in the district, the way that we do it since the late 1970s. And so we're applying modern technology and working diligently to use that technology to make new discoveries. Our history, again, really quickly, acquired the property in 2019. We've actually drilled 10 holes. Our first drill hole was in 2021. And we've done surface mapping, surface geophysics, a little bit of airborne geophysics. Last 3 years, we've drilled on the La Plata Canyon side. This is what that looks like. So you've all been up in the La Platas. This is looking to the west over La Plata Canyon towards Bedrock Creek. That's Pinball Alley. You can see some of the historic roads to access the drill site historically. And what you can't see is our drill, but it's right down there, hidden in the landscape. So really small footprint of the type of work that we do. And one of the reasons we do it, that I do it, I mentioned I was a Fort Lewis grad. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to live here. I wanted to work here, but there were no jobs. And I had to go and do the things that I did, which were great for me. It was a great adventure. But I was in Grand Junction yesterday and I heard a quote from Jeff Hurd. Actually spoke with Jeff, and Jeff says the greatest export of rural Colorado is its kids. And he meant that because there aren't good paying jobs, good science and technical jobs for these kids to work on. So they have to go to Denver, go to Albuquerque. And in the 5 years that we've been here, we've been able to employ 15 Fort Lewis College geoscience grads or students, plus a number of other locals on the project. So it's about that. It's about talking about that growth or that potential and what kind of positive impacts these projects can have, while understanding all the risks and communicating those risks openly. And I don't know if mining is fully appropriate for the La Plata Mountains, if there's going to be water supply to make it happen. But I'm ready to have this conversation to see if it is something that can benefit all of us. Our plans this year were to drill about 5,000 meters. We're working on finalizing those plans still. And expanding our environmental work as well, and continuing water sampling. We've been doing water sampling since 2019 in both branches, both freshet and low flow. And then working to engage the community more. So we're in the process of bringing on a new external affairs relations, community relations liaison to help facilitate the conversations and to be more present in the community so you understand what we're doing. And our intention right now is to do it for the next 3 to 5 years and see where we get. We do have to raise funding for that. My 5 minutes are up. I'm gonna finish up in 3 minutes. Yeah, okay, thanks, Danny, I appreciate that. This is a map. You can see the yellow line is the county boundary between Montezuma and La Plata. The red blob is where we've identified mineral resources. The blue and yellow dots are currently permitted drill sites. Okay. Our intention was to drill this year around the red blob in the middle, from one drill site, perhaps drill Copper Hill, the yellow dots down there, and then on the Montezuma County, you can see the two blue dots. Those are helicopter fly sites. So they would be helicopter supported. You fly the rig in, drill a hole, fly it off. And this is actually from the Yukon, but that is after drilling what a helicopter fly drill site looks like. Looks like nothing happened. So I think that's important to note, that it's pretty low in the sense of impact, other than when you use helicopters. Yeah, helicopter. We've worked to mitigate that and develop flight lines that are not invasive and that have vertical takeoff and landing, so they gain elevation, overfly and move on. Just to tell you that we're heavily regulated already through the Forest Service, through the Colorado Division of Mining, VRMS, Mining Reclamation and Safety. We've got a number of NOIs out, and the plan of operation that we have not triggered a fuse on for 1 year's worth of drilling on the 14 approved sites. And then, of course, the current SWIP, substitute supply water plan. We are, you know, the reason you're all here mostly is mining, but also to understand more, as Danny said, about the substitute water supply plan. That plan that was put in calls for 3 drill rigs and 7 months of drilling. Right now, our projections for this year would be 1 rig and 4 months. So that process would be to pump 1,800 gallons of water to the rig on the first day of drilling. And then the substitute plan calls for, in the drilling process, you have a loss of 250 gallons a day through evaporation, through water loss into the formation, that you would pump from the creek close to the helicopter drill site to the drill rig, drill a hole, fly it off, report that information to the division engineer, who then tells us to go and deposit the appropriate water in the creek at the appropriate place. And so that's the foundation of that plan. We haven't sourced water inside or outside of the basin yet to do that. But my last slide, again, from my perspective, this is a 20-year conversation. Very early, could be some real benefits to mining, and in a sense, that ability to actually clean up what is not just point source effluent, but natural background effluent of acid generating material. Think about the idea of actually having a mining company, instead of using public funds to pay for that cleanup, for the installation of a water treatment facility that would immediately handle all of that acid issue downriver. Just topics to think about. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Contact information is here. I'm happy to share a business card. And I will turn it back over to you. And I was only 10 minutes over time.
It's Scott. We will have time for questions for Scott at the end. And now I will invite Musto. Good morning, everyone. Come on there. Nick Musto, Mr. Granger for the Memphis Waters District on the San Juan National Forest. And kind of what I wanted to go over today, not the PowerPoint, just kind of wanted to talk person to person, if that's okay. I'll make up for the 10 minutes you went over as well. But just wanted to have a conversation around, you know, generally what does it look like when you have a private mineral right on federal land? What is the process of that? What's it look like? And then kind of go over, specifically, what was, proposed as a plan of operation from Metallic in 2023. What does that look like? And then what is submitted for this year in 2024? Just so you guys have all the information I have, you have a conversation, at the end of the presentation. So it makes, I think it's conversation should happen this thing. So generally what this looks like is, we are submitted a plan of operations from the private mineral right holder. And that plan of operations suggests like, here's, where we're going to drill, and there's all the details of what that looks like. So we take that plan of operations from the private mineral right holder. We work that through a legal process, National Environmental Policy Act. That's that we used to see in those category exclusions, all the projects and sort of things that we do. And so, our role as the agency there is to carry it through that process, give it the right level of analysis, and it's really looking at compliance with a whole host of federal laws. But that it's different than like the role is to kind of approve, deny the valid exercise of that private mineral. So, the federal laws, of course, that would ask, we would review compliance with, several, but Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, National Historical Protection Act, which is how we protect archaeological resources on federal lands. Working that through our specialists and coming up with design criteria for the project. And those, in really relation to the surface area, that is where kind of we have the two right here. It's that surface area of the forest service land, the general right should be private. I want to make clear from the start too is that any activities that Metallic Minerals has on private land, there's long rectangular strips, patented mining claims that you see looking at land maps from these areas would not be regulated by the Forest Service. So we only have authority when ground surface is Forest Service property. So carry that through the process, and we then design criteria such as working with remediation in regards to making sure we receive the area, or maybe timing restrictions for draft protection. That's the plan. Having an archaeologist present on site or nearby archaeological resources. So it's really taking care of those surface resources where we have authority to say when it comes to things through the process. So that's kind of the general background of what this looks like for the Forest Service side. And I just want to be clear about some things that we don't have in here. Like is, water rights is a state land. It's not anything that we have in state. And then again, this private land operations, that's where we're having anything related to like mine safety, wildlife safety, that's the kind of Forest Service side. So Metallic submitted a plan of operations to the Forest Service in 2023. We took that plan of operations through the process and authorized that plan. And so I just want to cover like what was included in that plan and talk about kind of the changes to the plan before. So the 2023 approved plan included the 2 helicopter sites that we brought up on the Memphis side, and 2 helicopter site drilling sites on the La Plata side, and 10 ground-based drilling sites on the La Plata side. And then there were, to talk about the water resources and how those handled in that plan. That plan authorized 500 gallons a day from commercially available source. Untamed storage authorized, and no water discharge or disposal, and not expected to interact with surface water. And we should be very clear that any diversion of surface water is not included in that plan, and that still holds true to what was in 2024. Then going to differences in what was proposed this year. So this year, one of the helicopter sites in the Plata side was dropped, one of the retained, and then the 2 on the Memphis side location moved a few hundred feet, kind of roughly still the same spot in the watershed. But that new location requires us to go back to that deep analysis. If the application has changed, we might have a different wildlife concern, concerns that might be in that area. So we take that into the process. We have to date not started because I want to have a conversation with the community. I wanted to have make sure that we're all understanding the plan of operations proposed for this year before we carry that through. process. So, again, the difference in 2023 is 14 drill sites reducing down to 6. So the, one on the Plata side, the helicopter access, 2 on the main side, helicopter access, and 3 ground access on the Plata side. So that kind of catches us up to where we are today. Yeah. Just looking forward to the conversation, unless you have any questions that you have. Take your time, if you can. Appreciate that, Nick. Well, and finally, we have Corrigo with Division of Water Resources. Right, I don't know your title, I apologize.
I got little pieces of titles all smushed together. I'll explain that. Could you get one of those?
Yeah.
Just, I don't know if I'm gonna need it or not, just pull up one of those. Yeah, hello, my name is Corey Bowe. I work with the Colorado Division of Water Resources. Driving over here, I feel like as the water guy, I need to make some obligatory comment about the rain. It's very good. I saw the lyrics up today on the Florida River that hopefully that comes over here, but not in 10 minutes. We'll spread out overnight. There's a lot of water and hail. Like I said, I work out of our Durango office. That's kind of our Division 7 regional office. I work with Justin Catalano, you guys' water commissioner. He works more on like the day-to-day, in the field kind of water administration. I'm a little bit behind the scenes on plans like this, where it's more accounting and paper water and things like that. So just briefly, I'm going to talk about kind of 2 main things today. You guys have heard about the SWSP as a substitute water supply plan. I'll kind of talk about that briefly, what that means for the state, is how we administer those. And then the second part will just be a little bit more about the demands and replacement, the specifics of that project and how it might work on the ground. So an SWSP, substitute water supply plan, this is off our website, are temporary approvals by the state engineer of changes of water right or out of priority diversions and augmentation plans. SWSPs are usually limited to operating for 1 year, and authority to approve an SWSP is found in section 3792-308 of the Colorado Revised Statute. So it's in statute. That's what DWR enforces, is statutes. I think there's 4 or 5 different types of SWSPs. This is a type 5, meaning it's not associated with a court case. It's just a standalone water plan, a temporary water plan. Then going on, this is right out of the statute. The state engineer may approve such a plan or change if the following conditions are met. Okay, 1, application has been filed with the state engineer. Okay, that's been done. Applicant has provided notice. We have a notification list. Not exactly sure how it works, email, but it sounds like hopefully you guys have been notified. You provided comment, and that's the next step. State engineer has given all water right holders 35 days to provide comments that may include any claim of injury or proposed stipulation to prevent injury. And we've gotten those comments in 35 days. I think we've received more than that, and we've read them all and we've seen them, and we'll get to those in a minute. And then step 4, state engineer, after taking into consideration comments received, may then approve the plan if determined that the plan will replace all out of priority depletions of time, location, and amount to other already decreed water rights. So we're not to step 4 yet. We've received comments, we're looking at them, and we're working with the consultant to rectify any comments that we have the authority to rectify. Based on those 3 things: time, location, and amount. So yeah, so
Yeah.
let me just find that other one.
Tabs on the top are yours. So.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Let me just find this other one. Okay, so I think this was in that other presentation, but this was in their water application also. So their diversions are in kind of that pink area, kind of way up in the headwaters of the East Mancos River. In their plan, they mentioned they'd have temporary pumps, they'll pump the amount, small amounts of water for their drill rigs as necessary. Further up in this application are the tables of how much they might use per day, per month, all of that. I think the maximum with full build out, 7 months a year, it comes up to 0.91 acre feet of water, May through November. And then the plan that we got, they determined a depletion of 0.89 acre feet per year. So some of the water they use just goes back into the groundwater, is not depleted. That's a very conservative estimate of almost 100% consumption, which means that they would need to replace the consumptive out of priority diversion. So water that's diverted that flows right back to the river doesn't need to be replaced if there's no intervening water. So we've gotten their out of priority depletions are going to happen up in the headwaters. And that little red dot down there, that would be below the confluence of the East Mancos and I think the Middle Mancos, and right by the highway, that is their proposed point of replacement. So any water that's consumed out of priority, they will replace it at that spot. Their proposed sources of replacement water are pumps or potable water stations in Durango, Cortez, and Dolores is the replacements that we got. So you guys are water people. This is kind of my map, and it's kind of the same area. And you can see those dots are existing surface water rights. So their plan is to deplete up here and replace below the bridge. Well, obviously, there's some 3 or 4 ditches on the East Mancos that will be in between there. So they could potentially be injured by this process. There's ways to satisfy those injuries. We're just in the stage of working with the consultant and the water people to make sure that whatever plan they come up with to replace these injuries works for everybody. So that's kind of where we're at now. And like I said, we're still reviewing this application and working with irrigators and Justin about the lay of the land, and we should get it to a place where there's no injury, otherwise we cannot approve it. That's all I had. I was saving time. I'm sure questions will be more relevant than me trying to guess what you guys have questions about. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Justin.
Of course.
Justin next.
Yeah, Justin.
Hey, thanks, Marty.
That's a good one.
Well, we're now at question period, so I'm wondering if the speakers can come up. I'm sorry, we're just like having the talking heads up here. And feel free to sit down. You guys can stand or sit if you want.
It doesn't matter. They need it. So I'll stand. Let's stand. Yeah, intimidate people.
And, in asking questions, want to emphasize, we probably won't be able to have enough time to answer everyone's questions. Please just you consider that other people probably also want to ask questions. But, yeah, I know this might be a big process. Okay, so we'll see. I see. Maybe what we can do is write down, maybe someone, Dustin, do you want to go around and have people write down their names of who wants to ask a question? People, if you just want to raise your hands, who wants to ask a question, and then we can kind of work through a process there. But I did see a first hand over yonder, so I'll go there first. Yep.
So I'm not Jay, I'm with the Tribal Services Information Office for the Youth Multiply. And especially for the chief of appointment that we want to be up with that territory, to represent tribe, even though the tribe suddenly, and it's quite funny, but if you work in the north, it seems like you learn very little about pragmatic development. And I'm gonna take one day because no trouble. We mentioned that there is a national forest responsibility, to the tribes with tribal consultation and, the park, so, I'm also, what it tells and I could distribute, but, water, like pollution, we can probably figure about, for us, after 30 years, I'd like to see Scott have a things differently. I mean, when it comes to the private resources, not just our probably, we have some of the five survey, and that includes, water, where I have some of them, like watershed, so that means upstream, downstream, and that, so I really hope that, tribal participation is not being like that.
I will first apologize for not making that land development. We do that in our income project. We have an extensive history, our group, of working with the Tall Sand in British Columbia, Nacho Nyack, and Dana Corporation. And that's been over decades. So I do understand the importance of that. And we have taken the first step to initiate discussion with at least one of those tribes, but the plan is to hit all of the reservation systems and have that fulsome discussion. So I was at the North American Minerals and Energy Symposium in Ignacio a couple of weeks ago, and I found that really compelling, moving, and enjoyed meeting all the representatives of both the Southern Ute and those from Mountain Ute, Mountain Ute tribe that were there. And so again, that is the first step in initiating those discussions and understanding those concerns and recognizing the language.
But I think that something that happened as well, kind of concern that this is a community concern, and we can't, we then need to, under only,
Thank you.
And so what we're gonna do is try to at least capture some themes, questions here. Honestly, we don't know exactly what a desired action coming out of this is. We don't have a complete vision, but right now it's mainly type of community conversation. And then towards the end of these questions, we'll maybe kind of ask all of you what you might want as a next step. So wondering what the next name is there. Shelley.
Hi, I have a question, Scott, for you. Thank you for your words and the updates. I'm gonna ask you about some actions. Could you talk about the safety record of Newmont Corporation, your affiliated company? And also, I understand that there's a pit toilet at the Allard line. And could you talk a little bit about how you oversee the safety of your crew and the impact on the environment?
Well, safety is always job one, and we had a discussion today on standard operating procedures around safety and making sure that our crew come home safe every night. That is part and parcel of what we do. I can't speak to Newmont's safety record necessarily. That's their safety record, not ours. They are investors in our company because they see the potential of the project. So we use money that they invested to drill last year. Other than that, we share a technical committee with them and work with their technical expertise in terms of helping to guide our exploration over the project.
You're not aware of the deaths, the money that happened in the past year?
There's deaths in a lot of industries, and no, not with Newmont specifically. I'm not.
And that was in particular.
That's also something, I don't know if that's rumor or what.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm unaware of it. If that's something that's happening, we can get it cleaned up and take care of it.
Okay, thank you. Next. Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Gray, I live down the river. I own one of the oldest orchards in Montezuma County, and so I view things from kind of a long-term perspective, especially when it comes to water. Water's a critical resource in this area. Granted that the SWSP is a one-year plan, but if that is approved, as it stands, where the water's coming back from to replace what we use. Is that going to set a precedent going forward? And is it going to potentially have an extended time frame? Or can it spend money involved? I mean, are we setting a precedent here that it's 1 year? That's what it does. That could potentially impact us down the road. No, don't get me wrong. My dad was an engineer geologist, and I get it about money, but I am concerned about my origins and my vision.
So further into this, it's good for 1 year and then it can be reapplied, with similar plan for the following year, up to 5 years. And then after the 5th year, then it goes through another process. It usually has to get a decreed water right, go through water court. You can't just keep renewing these temporary plans. As far as setting a precedent, it doesn't. The replacement source coming from Durango or Cortez or whatever, the water is this is just a one time. Nobody at water court is going to refer to the SWSB and say, oh, it was approved here, therefore we can approve it here. It's just a standalone kind of deal. And, okay.
And it's, if it's approved for this year, it's good for this year, and then you reapply,
Yep.
and that
Reapply.
goes back out for public
Yep.
comment.
Yes.
Conduct.
The same process every year.
Alex. There might be more than one Alex. Yeah, I'm Alex Krebs. I guess I'm here outside of the water, I'm a little bit more on the wildlife side of things. I'm a chapter lead team in the back of the terms and neighborhoods in our region. And I'm mostly familiar with the NEPA process and engaging through the NEPA process, so that's kind of where my question would be centered. I'll try to kind of distill it into one question, but I know there was the initial NEPA, and then it was amended this year. It looked like it wasn't going to be the standard public review procedure, at least not the full procedure with comments and alternatives for the amendment, for this smaller amendment. And with the project scope, looking at 18 years to potential impactful mining activities, I guess my concern is that there will be NEPA processes that take place in stages, and then when we get to the critical moment of NEPA evaluating actual mining activity, there will be 18 years of investment and possible loss and litigation. When we get to that stage, if there was denial for something that we already know is something that would be needed at that time, like road infrastructure and bigger items like that. So I guess I'm just looking for clarity on how the NEPA process is expected to play out over the next 18 or so years to the stage, if we can capture bigger items that we may able to need it sooner in the process. So, basically that's, I guess, maybe we take that and run with it.
I appreciate the question. And certainly would love to talk afterwards. So please stick around. So, we can't do an even analysis on things that haven't been brought to us as the project proposal. What's in front of us is there was 6 exploratory trail sites. That's what's confirmed, that's what's asked, and so that's what we need to take forward. And so, our 2023 authorization is available on our website. We have not started the scoping process. We've not really kicked off the review process with this project for 2024. Also, again, my NEPA person.
Yeah, there's a sign up sheet in the back. Sign up sheet on the project. We haven't done the scoping for it yet. This is like Danny said, this is outside of our.
So this is actually not the amendment that I saw from the project site.
There's a placeholder.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
So thanks for being engaged. Does that kind of answer the general scope of your question?
Yeah, it does, and it's nice to know, like, that's what we have to work with, that like, at a certain point, you can look back and it's like, well, we invested 17 years in place, the pressure builds inside the dog. That will happen. That doesn't work. I'll say thank you for having that list back there. That was actually gonna be one of my requests. At the end of this is like, how can people like hear in an ongoing basis and a formal basis about like what the different steps are. You know, we can assist with that as much as possible, but we are like not the agency or not the agency. So like, we will be able to hear directly from the agencies when, you know, different steps of the process can like figure it out.
And I believe in making that available to folks is very wise. They want public feedback.
Hi, I'm one of the three men, I'm one of the landowners who, dealing with six issues, which are thanks to that. But my question is actually, so I've already commented.
Yeah, I did read your comment.
Yeah, but my question is actually about water quality. And who is the authority acts on water quality, and how do each of the three of you interact with it? We alluded at the end, something about mitigating water quality issues, but it sounds like none of the three of you are like really responsible for that. So who is, and how do they interact with you?
So that one.
I don't know that I have a good answer. You know, in terms of water quality and the impacts of the drilling that we're doing, the exploration drilling, it's really a closed loop. So, you know, we draw water, we drill a hole, there's water lost in evaporation, recirculation ponds, or into the formation in the hole. But that is a closed system, so we're recirculating that water down in the ground, back into a sump, settling out the materials, putting water back into the hole. And unless there's a super storm event, that sump is contained. And so none of that water reaches into the stream or a river. But, so the question is on water quality would be the water quality of the substitute water that's being put into the mancos at the lower.
But I think that the issues of drainage and surface water can be obviously two different things. And the closing of the holes eventually when you're through with them, and how do we know that, you know, there's some series of issues actually coming out, and how do you know, what kind of assurances, you know?
Well, those are largely Colorado URMS oversight. So we bond the work that we do. And if for some reason we do something wrong, screw something up, that bonding will take care of that issue. But we're, you know, by notice of intent with Colorado Division of Mining, Reclamation, and Safety to plug those holes completely and make sure there is no artesian flow. And we've done that on every hole that we do. Jamie probably has a good understanding of the process, I think. Don't you, Jamie? Maybe?
Yeah, well, so yeah, they're required to plug the hole if there's any kind of water, like PRMS designation. Forest Service is required to make sure that they comply with state law, and state laws, they counter water that plug the entire hole up into within a few feet of the surface using a combination of bentonite and cement. Bentonite is a clay that expands when it encounters water and absorbs the water and becomes impermeable, used to bind ponds and stuff like that. In this case, it would get pumped down the hole and then expand and prevent any water from migrating up or down within the hole.
So basically the Forest Service is responsible for monitoring that, or Division of Mining and Safety?
It's a DR, the regulation about plugging holes is the PRMS regulation. We need to make sure that they're complying with the PRMS regulations. And so for holes that are drilled on Forest Service land we are, we need to do, inspection and enforcement well of the.
What about the one on private planes?
DRMS again, we're meeting that regulations. But I'm not sure on, there's so many layers of regulations and oversight from different agencies and stuff that, remember all this stuff, but we're following the code that's put forth by the Colorado DRMS and plugging each and every one of those holes with bentonite, cement and sap.
Well, I got it. That's fine. I just want to hang on his, so I don't.
So, follow-up question was, is the replacement water is fluoridated and have a different chemical, constitution. We're studying the rigor regularly.
Yeah.
That changes, I think that's what I see.
Yeah, well, I think there were 15 or so different comments and several of the comments were on that. So that plan right now, and the way that it's been put forth is to draw water from, either the Animas and bring it over or Dolores and bring it over. And then there's the comments about macroinvertebrates and, different water quality and then, okay, maybe we use potable water and then that's been fluoridated. So, what are those impacts to water quality? And I don't know all the answers on that. I know there's some mitigations that we can do relative to the fish, and it's just put a screen on the infant. I know that chlorinated water, chlorine breaks down very quickly. By the time it actually gets to the site, it's not going to be an issue. But the solution is to make a stranded water as a substitute water. The problem for us has been, there's not too many people who want to work with us in terms of selling it water, providing it. So I'm not saying that we have done an extensive job of sourcing in basin water at this point, and that we're continuing discussion. And we're being guided in that discussion by Harris Water Engineering, during Terry Paget. And so that quest is ongoing to sort of address those comments and reply, and that effort to build a response to those comments is ongoing.
So I'll just add, the water quality has been brought to our attention. I didn't mention that in my talk because our office does not do water quality. I think the state of Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment might offer some assistance, or I think the Department of Environmental Quality. But we don't work with them closely about this kind of thing, because it's never, in my experience, hasn't come up.
Do they work with the Department of Mine and Safety?
We get comments from them occasionally about the I don't know, the end of life deal for the mine, but that, again, we're water quantity.
Yeah.
Quality is, not our water. We don't have the expertise whatsoever for that.
It would have been good to have DRMS here tonight, but I guess we don't have a representative from there. I know there's a lot of cross communication across all those departments, and I don't know if it's just notification or when the application comes in, they send it to that department or the review. For all the various departments that you might have some sense of responsibility and return comments before authorization.
So Division of, Reclamation and Mine Safety was invited, I think they wanted to talk about something like lots of there. How limited they would be would have to cover the time. Okay. I think there's a lot more we could go down that hole. Kevin is next, but okay.
So, thanks for coming out. Definitely appreciate that. I'm on, there are several lists, the injured parties on headgates, below where you're taking water, above where you're replacing. One of the reasons no one wants to sell you in barge is none of this agriculture producers having water themselves.
Right.
I'm the president of one of the ditch companies, and we're pretty much near for the second by 50 yards, maybe we're the second highest state gate on East Mancus. There's no good road up there. I'm just curious, I mean, this whole water replacement thing should be dead on arrival. It's not possible to not injure us unless you helicopter in one water the way the helicopter in the rig. I'm curious, you seem to imply that there were conversations happening with the injured parties that were going to provide a satisfactory outcome. I mean, in the summer, we're desperate to get water irrigated to feed our cattle. That river's tiny, it's a trickle by August, so like, I don't see it.
Yeah, and that, it's not our job to come up with those ideas, it's with the consultant and the owner to amend their application. We can offer, say, hey, what about these 3 ditches, how do you plan to replace them? And then you go back and say, well, we'll figure out something. So as written, we can't really approve, but there's no deadline to act it and say it's done, you gotta come back next year. It's
So
kind
your
of,
reassuring answer is the plan as it was written and the objective of the state engineer is dead. The next plan.
well, it's not dead, it's just they can amend their replacement proposal in this
With
plan.
a different approach.
Yeah,
Which
And
would require creative solutions to your issue.
yes.
And, as he said, you know, we're the same way. I don't want to see anyone injured from our activities. So can we come to a creative solution? I don't know. We're working through that right now. If you have some ideas, you know, one idea for, some of those parties, particularly like your gate, I don't know if you're using a retention dam at some point along that way that's maybe more accessible along the ditch, where a slug of water could be used to account for what we would consider the year's worth of water lost at some point during the year. I mean, there's maybe creative solutions that way. I don't know, but you know, that's what we've got to have some thought on and continue to maybe have some discussion with you.
thank you for clarifying the status. I haven't got a lot of communication about what that thing is. And we're obviously very worried.
Sure, appreciate that. And I would say too, just to that point, I know, a lot of comments, well, we haven't been here. We haven't really worked that much on the Montezuma County side. We've worked on the La Plata side. We actually drilled holes over the last 3 years. And I think, hopefully to our credit, we've done it pretty well relative to DRMS's standards. And we try and hold ourselves to a high degree of standard. Now, with respect to engagement, I see us beginning this conversation and not only beginning to hold open houses and come more regularly and keep you informed, but to develop a community section of our website that has more up-to-date information on our plans so that you can go there as one-stop shopping to see what we're saying about what we're doing, learn about what those benefits are and work on that. So thank you for your comments.
Next up is Ed.
Yeah, I'm Ed Archuleta, so a question to extend on the gentleman about the NEPA process of health service. So when this, if and when this goes beyond the exploratory, what talk with kind of, and it goes to access roads and site work, more physical impact in the mountains. What's the, can you explain the NEPA process, public comment process, and how that can affect the Forest Service decision for the impact to it?
Sure. So I don't want to get into like, you know, what different exact levels it could be, because there's just so much that depends on the specifics of what's proposed. You know, whether that's environmental assessment or whether it's environmental impact statement, that sort of thing. But certainly like each and every one of those involve comment period for the public when it comes to project proposals. We're still kind of, I think, a long ways from that point.
Fair enough, it's a long way, but how does that impact the forest decision on allowing access to big degrees of access?
Sure. So there was, I mean, it would still be a similar situation in the sense that it's still a private property, you know, mineral right, like on Forest Service surface property. And so, I mean,
But not from point A to B,
right, exactly.
it's not all going to be private property.
Right.
It's going to be processed by public.
and there we'd have some ability.
All right, so. How does that, how does NEPA make comment that enforces decisions and allowing these? things?
Sure, so what we can, like, the request there would be, have public comments help shape what are the topics that we've not considered, right? Like, there are wildlife impacts we've not considered, right? There, you know, so something about a specific spot where the road is currently is that we have not considered. You know, as we work our way through that process. So it's about kind of looking at that whole project process, taking those public comments and having that shape what our analysis is.
Sounds like we need a public meeting with healthy to understand the process.
Certainly agree.
Thanks. Next up is Mike.
So I'm president of the Conservation District, I try to do whatever company, all statements I will make. I can, sometimes I get on that whole side. I feel like this to be straight up, I feel like I'm being gaslit a little bit about the going forward this thing and going elsewhere and this can have community benefit when your job is to please the board and shareholders, not us at the end of the day. So I don't know where the community benefit of anything happening up there is going to happen to us. Because at the end of the day, when I talk to farmers and ranchers, especially in injury, could potentially already done with regards to what we want. I think when I speak to a lot of people, is that the worry about this is not that the end worry about all this is that what's going to happen if it's wrong? Because there is a potential for wrong, and the risk will permanently be put on us and not necessarily your companies or associated companies. If you involved, you know, and perhaps you could do that, we need to still dealing with that. And like, I don't really have much of a question, I just kind of want to make that statement. Right? I get where you're coming from. Like, it's your job, it's your passion. You've probably done really good work on the ground on other places you're doing. But to try to sell it to this community because of we need to stop nationwide inflation, like, I mean, like, just please, like, respectfully, like, I'm hoping we have any need about this 100 more times and work on resolving this a little bit because I just sincerely, like, get where you're coming from and get where you're trying to do. And the next time someone tells you to stick, it's disrespectful. No, you don't use
Yeah, my question is, do you have a slide that is equivalent for the other side of the La Platas?
In terms of,
The La Plata River? This addresses the mangroves.
I don't have one on hand. But I can supply that information to you.
I really would. I live right on.
Great.
And we're pretty particular.
We understand that. Yeah, we went through this process last year, got comments from La Plata River water users and developed a plan that it wasn't.
Well, that's not 100%. I live on the towers and I never got anything.
Yeah, it's this notification. I don't know who gets this notification list, but you have to sign up for it. I would just be in touch with the La Plata Conservancy District. They were notified, I'm sure, about this. That's how the information is passed on.
I don't think the tracker needs that. I suspect we might have to read this back there, but I don't.
I think if people can like project their voices as much as possible, it'll be helpful for people behind you guys.
It would be good policy to directly inform the conservation districts. The conservation district learned about it because I happen to go a water where it reads these things. That realizing there. So it's we appreciate the direct communication here, but it should be on a regular basis, but I think before they, if we can then inform us here.
Specifically, that was the one. Yeah, I mean, they claim it's been posted for consumption versus how fast it moves on. But who the hell subscribes to the state of Colorado engineer notification?
Yeah, no, I agree, yeah, not everybody signs up for this list. It's just a list out of Denver that's created.
To be informed, like,
The conservation districts and have them help distribute it, for sure.
We'll say the conservation district is on our scope.
So then it's like one role that we could play going forward, we could probably have like page on our website, just like links. Just like allow people to be able to access some of these resources. And I think we want to like make sure to say that we aren't the ones regulating it, we aren't the ones like managing where you go with the things, so we can help provide those. Well,
Yeah. Common questions for you. I know that you talk about money being far ahead, way down the road. I also know that you mentioned that we didn't do anything that we like good money. So what do you have in mind?
Well, I
Can
think,
I repeat the question?
I'm asking about what type of money they're looking at doing. You mentioned no person. But what type of money are they looking for doing out there? And how does that impact?
we're still exploring, so we don't know what we're going to find. And the geometry of what we find defines how it's mined. I would say that an open pit mine, it would be completely unacceptable in those fines.
Now, I watched your YouTube channel and then you mentioned something about blockchain.
Talk about block caving, so that the shape of what we've determined at this point is vertical, and that's an underground mining operation with a small footprint. It looks similar to what Henderson Mine is outside of Winter Park. So we get fairly promotional in a lot of our talks because we're raising money to continue to work with. We're investor driven, so we do get promotional.
What kind of an impact is that?
Well, essentially, you have a small footprint for your facility. And, what they do is they come in underground, and depending on the depth of that, it might actually cave all the way to surface and make a pit at surface, but it's a subsidence pit. It's not a big open pit that is generated from surface mining. So the impacts are all on the ground, small surface pit, and then the subsidence pit. And that's what that deposit looks like today. But that is not necessarily what it's gonna, or would be 20 years ago. The other thing I would say is that what we have found in that shape at this point would not be economic. So as much as we talk and try to promote what this might look like to encourage investment, that shape and what we found in the resource right now, not so it maybe at the top it was $8, perhaps, but not in its current configuration, which is why we haven't initiated any economic studies to determine, those next steps and what that question would look like. So again, yes, we talk about block caving and the idea of building a resource and making it bigger and all those sort of things, but in fact, there's not an economic deposit there right now. We're still doing exploration and trying to find areas that may be, while we expand our knowledge and apply our expertise in that regard.
Thanks. All right, Tom Bennett?
I have numerous things to mention. I've been probably more affected by this than just about anyone so far. I have my residential water well is very near Copper Hill proposed goal that has been approved. Okay, my question is, what's in your fluid besides water? The reason I'm asking that is because
behind all of this all agree that contamination by well is not, cannot be ruled out. In many cases, they believe there's a small chance that that will happen, but my objections have largely been ignored by every agency that has reviewed this. My well is within a couple thousand feet of where the nearest borehole would be, so I'm very, very concerned about my water. I have installed in my well the depth measurement device in order to be able to monitor my static level and everything else. And Steve Glass has agreed to sample my water, only because I complained to the RMS, and I've not heard from him since. Okay? So this is a big problem. And this, you know, so I really would like to hear what is exactly in the fluid besides water, so that when the time comes, I can monitor my water and be sure there's no cross contamination. I'm extremely disappointed that my pleas and requests, maybe move that borehole, maybe angle it a different way, completely ignored. In fact, you guys, I'm within a quarter mile. You didn't notify me any of this stuff. And by the way, the tribal folks, you mentioned that you did notify them, but I heard that you didn't. So, and you guys are behind the 8 ball. You're, you know, talking about this community engagement. Thanks, Danny, by the way, for, you know, organizing all of this, because if you hadn't, none of us would be here today talking about it. And thank you guys for coming too, by the way. But anyway, I'm very concerned about this. And I've been watching it since your first permits went in with Bedrock. And, you know, to suggest that it's not without issues is a little bit much, because we hear those drills. We go up there, we hear it. Okay? There's less wildlife around when you guys are drilling, and that thing's going 24 hours a day. You know, so this is not a small thing. Beware, all of you. When it comes closer to your neighborhood, the approving agencies have not done a darn thing. When I have a very valid concern about my well and my personal well water, again, hydrologists agree that it can't be ruled out. Okay. The other thing that comes to mind is, if any of you have gone out and looked at Metallic Minerals presentations, primarily by Greg Johnson, to investors, it's grossly different from the story that we're given here. Yes, to raise money. But where are we, how are we to know, right? He's talking accelerating that time. You know, you're saying 18 years? That's not what he says. When he's talking to the people who are buying the stock, that's not what he's saying. And that gets us, you know, very concerned here about what's going on. It's great to hear that that Howard deposit is not economic, as you say. That's one. Let's hope the rest of them are that way too. Your goal is to mine, okay? This is not, you know, you wouldn't be out here spending this money, doing all this, if you didn't think that there was going to be mining from them. That's the goal. So, I just can't see this, you know, being as cut and dry as being presented here today. This is a much bigger deal for the area. As far as community involvement goes, it's been a massive failure. The only reason we're hearing about it here is because somebody caught it, who happened to notify the Mancos Conservation District, and they organized this. All the other permitting has been done under the radar. DRMS, they put something on their website, there's 20 days to comment. That's it. It's all low key. Nobody's knowing what's going on.
Do something similar.
Well, if you could please let me know what elements, what materials are in that drilling fluids that I can continue to monitor our water, that'd be super helpful.
And Jamie mentioned earlier, it's mostly bentonite. So, bentonite water, that's what we're using in the drill hole to condition that drill hole and keep the bed cool so that it can, you know, penetrate the rock. Right. And I appreciate your comments. I know that you are, where you're situated in the valley, there is, as much as anybody impacted, as you mentioned. And in terms of your well, you mentioned Steve Glass. Steve Glass he used to live in Port Said in Phoenix now. He's a permitting consultant for us. And he's handled a bit of the interaction with Tom. We have volunteers tested as well before and after drilling. That is still the case. And because we have not initiated that process, what is probably going to happen for you is Sean Moore of SME is going to come out and initiate that discussion with you, because there would be a process.
Sean Moore.
Yeah. Okay. But I would expect to reach out at some point here in the future, in the near future, and we'll see where that goes. But
Any chance of anyone looking boreholes off a different way to avoid my well?
well, yes. And I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but it's, an obstacle is moving holes, changing locations, doing that thing is another process for us. So that's something that we would have to go through, and if that is truly concerning, we consider.
Thank you, guys. This is awesome. It's 7:30 right now. There's a lot more people have questions. They do want to support that. I'm wondering if you guys would be willing to stand for it. We probably won't be able to work through. We're only about like the way through the side of questions. But we'll also acknowledge this is not going to be the last conversation. Thank you, though. If anyone has to leave, feel free to tell us something. Comments anywhere? Yeah, actually, I mean, written comments and detailed consolidated comments for sure. And what we'll probably do is consolidate comments and report out these notes that are from this meeting, and we will post them through our listserv, and we can. So feel free to provide comments. I mean, the comments are going to be like formal comments, right? They are all the issues. So it's not just an observation. You can provide like formal comments like your Forest Service or Division of Water Service.
Formal comments again for our side of the house, like, get with them, get your name on that list. Appreciate it. Update.
Yeah, that's all right. Kira,
So, I have a question for each of you. Keep going next year. I represent Five Rivers Trout Unlimited, the conservation based in Durango, but also the trout. So very familiar with mining and issues that it causes to water drainages across the country, especially in regard to hard rock mining and the historical past of what's been going on. So first, Scott, right? Yeah, Scott, just want to make sure. I'm curious about Metallic Minerals' stance on the 1872 mining law reform. If there's any progress on that, if you're a proponent of it, if you're completely against it, just for a little bit of awareness for others. Hard rock mining laws have not been updated since 1872. Which means that there are zero logging and reclamation requirements from hard rock mining. I might not have that exact point, so it's pretty much the status of things. So something that we've been actively pushing for from Trout Unlimited for a long time, and that's something that I would love to have stand in place before mine potentially goes on and that's upstream. I also live on the Black River. I'm a fisherman. I'm concerned about native fish. And I know that there are native cutthroat cats from the Black River. And would love to hear some comments in regards to native species, not just fish, but also how we can make a on that. And then from a water quality, water quantity standpoint, I guess my question to you, and maybe it's a little bit more applicable to the Lafada than the Mancos. I'm not as familiar with the streams as that one. But what is the point of putting water back into the system in such a different location than where it's removed. We can get to, especially on the Lopata side, very near where it's being pulled out of the drainage. Why not put it back there? There's potential injury, not just the humans, but the species and fish. There you go.
In terms of the law of 1872, I mean, it's old, it's antiquated. It's obviously allowed us to be entrepreneurial and identify locations that have potential mineral deposits and act on that like staking claims. And beyond that, I really don't have a comment on the law of 1872. I know there's been a lot of talk and discussion about changing that and, you know, revising it. The one big gap is not the reclamation piece, because that is required, but the royalty piece. How much should the federal government get from a mining operation of federal? And so that, you know, that would be something that I could see being addressed, because it's not a clear just take. There are economic bounds with which a company like ours or a mining company actually work, you know, has to work within. And if there are too many imposed royalties and restrictions, the mining in the US will just disappear. And then where are we? So,
Well, then the public left holding back, never mind. It's been.
no, I won't argue that there is a legacy, a bad legacy of mining, and that I can't tell you that, oh, it's all gone. The risk is still there. There's still risk relative to mining. And that is that discussion. It's like, is the risk worth the benefits? Because there are benefits. And I talked about some of those earlier on. In terms of having jobs, having an economy, you know, national defense, all those kinds of things are true benefits. And if you don't value those benefits, then maybe the risk is too much and it's not appropriate for mines that occur in those plots. And that's the discussion.
In fish concerns, I'd love to get you connected with my fishing biologists, by their favorite people in the forest. And, you know, as proposed, I mean, exploratory drilling discussion that we're, you know, is in front of us for this year. The proposal is that water gets hauled on site, it's used on site, consumed on site. I can't speak to the subsea water. Didn't do it, maybe you would have about.
I just wanted to add that, there are bonding requirements to the bond. You're required to set an actual cost bond to fully reclaim the proposed action if they stop and leave before reclamation is finished. So then that would be like what it would cost federal government to go and hire somebody to come in and complete the reclamation plan that was approved. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Colorado Division of Mining Reclamation and Safety, where we cooperate with them on those reclamation bonds. And typically what we do is we'll use the URMS's bond calculation and review that. And if there's something we need to add to it, like, oh, we need more money for, those are times to reclaim the roads or wherever we bought them, and usually it just gets added. And then typically we have the DRMS hold the bond for us in Colorado, just because it's easier for them to hold the bond because of the state has an easier time punching money for its federal government. But and so we do have requirements for bonding. And what was the other thing? The mining law has been updated several times. There's the Mineral Leasing Act. First, there was the General Mining Act of 1967, I think, was the first one, which still had a few things in play. Then there's the General Mining Act of 1872, which is the one that lets you state mining claims for valuable minerals. Typically, that means like gold, copper, and stuff like that. In 1920, there was the Mineral Leasing Act that removed oil and gas, coal, phosphate, and a lot of other types of minerals from the General Mining Act of 1872, so those aren't mining claim minerals. Those are released, and those also have a royalty on them, which, what we call locatable minerals, which are the mining claim minerals, do not have a royalty on them. And then there was the Common Varieties Act of 1947 and the Mineral Materials Act of 1955. Those removed common varieties of mineral materials from the mining law, so sand and gravel, building stone, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of, obviously, court cases and exceptions and this and that, you know, make a whole career as a mining lawyer, exploiting, but that in general, it's people say that there's no bonding and there's no, that hasn't been changed. Those are incorrect. What I think it comes from is that, processing, applications for activities on mining claims is not a discretionary activity. So if an area is open to mineral entry, which is, public domain federal lands are open to mineral entry, and they haven't been withdrawn by Congress or segregated, which is a temporary thing, for a specific purpose by the Department of Interior, then they remain open to mineral entry, and you can stake a claim on them. Now, if someone claim is an assertion of a possessory right for mineral, and so you're claiming that you've discovered, essentially. And if you submit an application to do exploration or mining on that claim, then we have to process that application. That does not mean we have to approve it. It just means we can't reject it out of hand and say, we don't want to do that there, but we do still have to do it. We have to use the Environmental Policy Act, National Environmental Policy Act. And then what we approve, if we do approve something, we have to comply with, the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act, and Clean Air Act, and all of those different acts. But we just can't reject it out of hand. And typically what winds up happening is not that they're rejected, it's that the cost of compliance becomes too high for the proposal, and then they, wind up canceling the proposal before the mine ever gets off the ground. Frequently, there's a few rounds of exploration drilling and stuff like that. Before the company decides that they don't want to continue, but it's pretty infrequent that projects go from a mining claim all the way to being a mine. Typically, they may never be explored, or if there's one or two rounds of exploration. But to get all the way through to mining, you have to have several rounds of drilling, and each one of those you go back, you recalculate the deposit and what it looks like, and then more rounds of drilling and drilling and drilling. So when they talk about the 20-year process, that's including the mining technical end of it, looking at your deposit, but also the extensive permitting end of it, which are kind of two different things that are related but not the same.
For the clarification, I just have one quick question, but just in terms of metallic minerals application for the permits from the Forest Service, is that part of, like, they have a reclamation plan in place when the application comes in? Is that something that we can see in terms of, like, what that is, in terms of the reclamation plan?
Yeah.
How that could potentially all work.
And that would be the proposed action for the DEPA action. And so, and one of the things that wasn't mentioned is, so when there's the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, and then there's the mining regulations, the 1872 mining law, and then all the other things that go into it, state laws. And so the first step when we get a proposal is what we call completeness review. And we go through and we look at what are they proposing to do? Are they proposing to drill or mine or whatever, and we see, have they submitted how they want to do this to us with sufficient amount of detail to have a proposed action to analyze underneath us. And right now, we've got a bunch of different stuff going on. They have the private land going, stuff going on, and their federal land. And I think there needs to be a lot more like right hand talking to the left hand going on, but the completeness review is a really important part. And that's part of just the federal process that we do the completeness review, and that becomes proposed action once that it's deemed complete. Doesn't mean it's the final thing, but it's sketched out enough that we have a good idea of what, where they're getting water, where the roads going, that kind of stuff. And, what kind of mining methods, it's a pretty involved process.
Thank you for those detailed questions. Let's detail this on. Okay, I think we're gonna call it at 8, so we have about 15 more minutes. Hold on to the next person.
Yeah. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. Scott's question is for you. What is the approximate size of the parcel you're going to be exploring? In acres per se?
In acres, in terms of what we've claimed, it's actually quite large. And that is, I can't think of the number off the top of my head, but I think it is on our corporate presentation. I'm not sure if it is, I can get that information to you. It's 6 miles by 6 or 7 miles roughly. And the reason that was done is not, necessarily the whole areas that we're exploring, but to stave off competition. So we have others in the district doing the same thing that we're doing.
So 6 square miles.
Yeah.
And how many, boreholes are you proposing in this first phase of exploration?
Well, right now, what we have permitted is 14 holes. And so that's what's in the proposal. I would argue that, once, we initiate, if we do continue to initiate a drill program this year, that it would probably be less than that for this year. And then each year, so one of the problems that, like Nick talked about, we're discussing movement of a helicopter drill site. That's because you drill a hole last year and you collect information and your ideas change, but the process to get through with the Forest Service takes more time. And so by the time you've gotten authorization to do that, your concepts of what you're exploring have changed and you want to move the drill line. And then you've got to go back and do it again. So it's a bit cumbersome for us, but I understand it's part of the process. And so we would drill 10 holes this year and then figure out what we've seen and figure out whether it's worth coming back the next year and continuing to do what we're doing.
And you're drilling as deep as 5,000 meters?
No, 1,500 meters, 1,300 meters is our deepest hole.
And then, off exclusively in igneous rock, or are you getting into sediment?
Right now, it's all igneous. It's mostly all igneous. We're right in the middle of the porphyry system, testing at depth the roots of the mineralization.
Okay, thank you.
Larry Garden?
My question is very good.
All right. Monty, speak for
Yeah. This is to Scott, on your original proposal I saw is from the website. I was reading through it, it's like 80 pages long. On page 40, it said there was 10 waters in that.
Is that the Forest Service application? Well, the technical report.
Yes.
The technical report was announced.
Yes.
80-page document, yeah, who knows? I think it's pretty clear that that's going to be a big issue, right? So I don't really have any answer for you in terms of the details of that.
And on your drilling, you say it's all igneous rock, but you're still losing 10%, 20% of yours. Have you done any water sampling in other wells? See, address the issue?
We haven't done any sampling in the wells. you know, typically, like I said, we're doing multiple locations in both drainages, freshet and low flow water quality samples. Above the drill site, kind of close to the drill site and below to see if there are any changes in that water chemistry downstream. And that information, at least the first few years of data that we collected, has been shared with DRMS. And so is public information for DRMS.
If the surface water up there. On our fault. Supporting the stream, and if you're using that down in the bowl, what is that doing to water supply?
Well, again, if it's all igneous, and this is, I brought this box of cores, so you can all come up and have a look, but this is what we're doing. This is what we're collecting. This is a 3 1/4 inch diameter drill hole. And we end up splitting this core and then sending half of it to the assay lab to be determine the quantity. But if you come look at this box, it's all igneous rock, and there are about 6 fractures in it. They're all mechanical fractures from pulling that drill core out. And so we do occasionally run into a structure, and that can take water or it can give water. And so, you know, that's just part of the drilling process. If it gives water, well, then we don't have to use as much, right? So we're just recirculating what we're seeing back in. At the end of the day, we put a plug in there and there's no artesian flow. Bentonite goes in the hole, that stops any internal flow in the hole. But that water, that creek water that's already acidic from that which is a bedrock creek, being used in the drill hole is not going to change chemistry by any significant measure. It's just water that's being recirculated in the drill hole.
Thank you.
Who is the meeting?
Good evening, and thank you to the Anchorage Conservation District and the three of you. 2 questions, the easier of 2 questions. If your project is successful in 5, 10, 20 years, what chemicals, what process, and how much water will you use at full production? Second question is a harder question. I spent a 45-year professional career following the legacy of graded water quality to the consumptive use community of water providers, drinking waters, non-consumptive use community, watersheders, even ag usage of water. Just so you know, it's not an isolated incident or one-off project. You know, I've been involved in projects on the Animas, the Arkansas, the Eagle, the Colorado, the Crystal, the Hargrave, the North Fork, the Gunnison, the Yamba, Parachute Creek, White Creek, and Gunnison, and all its tributaries like Crystal View, Coal Creek, of course, it's after the Summitville, and closer to home is the Morrison and San Miguel. And in all of those cases, the mining companies were no longer around, and not only were all just the legacy issues, they were newer mining, and it was the taxpayers that paid for the capital projects, that paid for the long-term O&M for their sophisticated drinking water and wastewater treatment plants. Even to the point that a lot of these small rural communities could not take care of their aging infrastructure because they were spending so much money in creating water. And I'm old enough to remember the approval of a lot of these projects, and they were sold on the idea of jobs, of our kids being able to live here. And when somebody says we're going to comply with all the regulatory requirements and NEPA, EIS, EAs, et cetera, watch out, because they all make those same promises. Scott, why are we any different? What are you going to do here?
Well, the first question was about the quantity of water during mining 20 years. I have no idea. We have no idea what the size of a deposit that might be economic to mine would be. It's early stage, we're just drilling a few holes and testing to see if there's something that we can continue to test to grow to an economic resource and continue that discussion. So I can't answer the first question. What was the second question? In brief?
What chemicals are you?
In terms of how we can be different.
I know you don't know the quantity of water, but typically what kind of chemicals are used in processing your ore?
I'm not an engineer, I'm not a metallurgist, I'm not a mill person, so I don't know all the answers to that. But it's, as the type of deposit it would be likely milled and processed using conventional flotation technology for copper recovery. And you have a byproduct of, or you have a concentrate that will be shipped off this. That's what I think would be envisioned. But again, it's, you know, we're talking about drilling a couple of holes. And many of you are talking about mining. And yeah, that is our goal, but we don't have any clue of what that is going to look like. So I can't answer those questions with any sense of detail. In terms of how we're going to be different, I don't know. I've mentioned a couple of times tonight that there's always risk. And I can tell you that we're going to do the best we can to mitigate that risk. And if we can't mitigate the risk, then maybe mining is not appropriate and we go away. But the thing is, if we continue this dialogue, that I'm going to have to prove to you that we can be different and that we are going to do it better. And that the regulations that cover us and our activities are some of the best in the world. Obviously, there's some holes in terms of notifications and things like that, but they're also improving. And the last part of that is if you can't get comfortable with us and we go away, that copper deposit is still sitting there. And that copper deposit will always sit there. And as long as the copper price is $4 or $8, somebody is going to be interested in going out there and trying to mine it. And so you could potentially say, well, it's not metallic minerals. Then it's going to be Joe Blow Minerals and the next company and the next company. And who's going to be right for that? So I think if I can't prove to you that we're going to do it right, but I have to prove to you that we can be trustworthy and do things that we say we're going to do and act in using best practices and improve and respond to your interests and comments in an appropriate way and try and build that trust over time.
I think that is a valuable question to end on. I'm sorry to the number of folks that we haven't, I wasn't able to ask their questions. We could go quite a bit longer. You know, one of the things that I'm hearing in reflection is a desire to be more engaged and to be more apprised of actions that are happening, and processes that are happening. That is something that we can support. I will also lean on our agency partners to help keep us engaged. And I know everyone will be able to do that on their own, but that's a service that we can provide. Is that desirable on your end for us to invest time in supporting communication? Thanks. Yes. Great. Thank you. Are there other things, I guess the other thing that I'm hearing and recognizing is a desire for ongoing long-term conversations. And I will give great appreciation to the speakers here for making themselves available, challenging questions. I know that can be uncomfortable, and I know that as, all of the providing service and the, what's needed for the community at the same time. So thank you for that. We don't have a schedule for how these conversations are gonna look. I think a lot of the schedule is gonna be dependent on what those agency processes are too. And what we will do, I guess, in the short term, or what we can commit to in the short term is developing a resource list and connection list, and we'll be reaching out to you, proactively to pull together these conversations. So I don't know, I'm wondering if there's any other requests from all of you right now, the district or for anyone else. Again, anyone else in presence here? You guys can just I don't know. You don't need to write anything down.
You don't agree with that?
Thanks, Danny, for all that.
Florence.